This morning I'm going to start out talking about wisdom. Proverbs is many times referred to as the book of wisdom because a lot of it was written by Solomon, and he was considered to be the wisest king that Israel ever had. He had the maturity, even as a young man, to ask the Lord for wisdom rather than riches. And God told him that because you've asked for wisdom, I will give you wisdom as well as riches. And he became the wealthiest king Israel ever saw. And wisdom is a very valuable thing. But let's take a look at this particular section is looking at the 4th chapter of Proverbs, which is a very valuable chapter. The 20th verse begins a section that I read every time I read the word. But God tells us what we are to do with wisdom once we obtain it. He says, prize wisdom and highly exalt her, and she will exalt and promote you. She will bring you to honor when you embrace her. That's in Proverbs 4:8 in the Amplified. Wisdom will exalt you. I mean, I'm a good example of that in many ways because I'm pretty upfront about how I was a pretty arrogant, hot-tempered young man. And when I was arrogant and hot-tempered, I acted like I knew it all because I think I was embarrassed when I didn't know things, and somehow I covered it up with bluster, like somehow people aren't going to be able to see through that. But when you're young and stupid like that, you don't know any better. When you get some wisdom, well, you know what? You can begin to do better in the things of life. You can conduct yourself wisely. And you know what? Employers will be more willing to promote you and trust you with things because you're not going to lose your head. You're going to think things through. You're going to use wisdom when you make decisions. You know, and to have my boss tell me, we've got a situation right now that's a big deal, these changes that we're going through. And he said to me, like he's done many times, which still amuses me now knowing my past, I'm going to trust you to handle this. You know, it's like a lot of bosses are like micromanagers, and micromanagers can be annoying. They hire you to do a job, but then they're looking over your shoulder at everything you do and trying to micromanage every decision you make. I'm so thankful I don't have a micromanager for a boss. He's like, your department, you handle it. But I keep him informed. I let him know when I'm doing things. And then if he has any input, he gives it to me. Most of the time, he's like, hey, thanks for that. Good job. That's nice to hear. But that only comes because I've been walking in the wisdom of God for a number of years, and I've become a different person because of the wisdom of God. Not because I'm so great, but because he's great in me. So if you want to be promoted in life, this verse tells you the way to do it. Prize wisdom and highly exalt her, and she will exalt and promote you. In other words, go after wisdom and do what wisdom says. Make your life and your decisions revolve around the wisdom of God. God knows more than you do. I mean, that seems like a duh statement, but how many times do we do our own thing, make our own decisions without even talking to God about it, without looking at his word and praying about it, and then we run into problems, and it's like, God's probably like, you could have asked me about that. I mean, God said in James, let a man ask for wisdom, and he says, I will upbraid you not. In other words, I won't chew you out for asking for wisdom. I will give it to you. So when we ask for wisdom, he'll give it to us. Why wouldn't we ask the Creator for wisdom? And sometimes it's ignorance, sometimes it's ego. I can handle this. We think we can do it ourselves. Sometimes it's immaturity, like little kids. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. And they're not even old enough to know. And sometimes we're, as Jesse likes to say, we're running around with our Pampers on, going, I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. Yeah, well, you're not old enough yet, son. Here's how you do this. I think of funny farmer stories because I love the stories of when I work for farmers, but I gotta stay focused here. We've been talking about wisdom. There's a good definition of what wisdom is. This is in Proverbs 4:11 in the Amplified. I've taught you in the way of skillful and godly wisdom, which is comprehensive insight into the ways and purposes of God. I have led you in paths of uprightness. I have led you in the paths of uprightness. When you have comprehensive insight into the ways and purposes of God, you're walking in those ways, then you're walking in wisdom. You're in a position for God to lead you in paths of uprightness. See, God can lead you if you're purposely looking at His wisdom, His word, and purposely walking in it. And yeah, you're not going to understand it all. You're not God, but you're born of Him. You're His kid. And if you'll let Him teach you, He can show you the way. God tells you what kind of help you can expect as you walk in His paths. In verse 12, it says, when you walk, your steps will not be hampered. Your path will be clear and open. And when you run, you shall not stumble. Now, here's where the good part is on this. McLaren's exposition of Holy Scripture has an explanation of this. This is really, really good for our Christian walk. When you walk refers to our daily walk. We have our daily walk that is just the humdrum everyday life. Most of our lives are not lived in the spectacular. Daily routine is not exciting most of the time. You get up, you go to work, you eat something, you come home, eat something else, you go to bed. Not too exciting. Everyday life is not a big party all the time. But our everyday lives are not supposed to be monotonous drudgery. God is saying that with His wisdom, we can be blessed as we walk through that daily routine. We can be at peace and prosperous no matter what we're doing. See, the daily, and I'll get into this in another time, but increase many times comes a step at a time. It's just like when you plant a crop. I've heard it preached, it's like you don't put the crop in the ground and the next day go dig it up and see if it's growing yet. And then dig it up the next day and see if it's growing yet. No, you have to let it alone. You have to let it be watered and fertilized and all the things that make it grow. And you have to trust that it's going to do what it's supposed to do. You plant the seed, you water it, you get rid of the weeds, you do all the things you're supposed to do, but you let it grow. It's not an exciting, you're not going to plant that crop and next week get out the combine. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a little by little. But you will have a harvest if you do the diligent things day by day that you're supposed to do. So now, the point is when you run, in verse 12, these are the times in our lives when there's something spectacular or a significant milestone in our lives. In those special times when extra momentum may be required to achieve something great, wisdom says, as you run with me, you won't stumble. Sometimes things are happening all at once. I mean, we all know that. We've lived long enough, you know that there are times when it's just day to day, and then all of a sudden there's a day everything's happening at once, and you're like, really? Does it all have to be today? But those are the times when something happens and you have to make decisions. You need the wisdom of God in you because now you don't have time to sit down and spend a bunch of time in prayer because everything's happening fast and you have to run. And when you're running, wisdom says you will not stumble because you're already walking in wisdom. Isn't that good? I like that. So whether we're living everyday lives or getting ready to achieve a milestone in our lives, God's wisdom will lead us on the paths of uprightness. It will keep us from falling or stumbling. Our path will be clear and open, and our steps will not be hindered.